out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you. Boy, for an 18-minute video, this thing just keeps on giving, which I probably knew that it would. I don't understand why you keep having this food fight over this thing, because what Kevin really does out in the world is not really going to stop anything that you do online. So I don't understand what the big upset is. Not like this is a criminal organization and what Kevin did is going to get the cops could come kick in your door. So I don't get it. I really don't. But somebody keeps sending me SWP's video. Now I watched some of it. I didn't watch all of it because SWP does tend to repeat himself a lot. So I didn't watch all of it. But there was a question about what's next, because he's referring to my last video, the one I did was my morning talk. And even during that video, I actually answered it. I actually answered what it was. I actually answered what's next. I guess people don't listen. I think people listen. What I think is people don't hear what they don't want to hear. Now, I'm going to start with a preamble first, because this is going to set up to what I'm going to say later. Really, the real punchline, the real answer. Okay, I discovered the Manosphere, the Black Manosphere, through a series of interactions, through a series of going from one group to the next, to the next, to the next, right? So I originally found the Manosphere from reading Dataclysm by OkCupid, because I wanted to understand how online dating was affecting the culture, affecting the population. I was curious about it. And inside Dataclysm, they showed the famous sexual marketplace value chart. So when I looked at the chart, I thought it was interesting. So I looked it up online, and I found out that Rollo Tomassi had created a similar chart like 2 years earlier. No, he did it with his own personal data, but it's eerily similar to the one that OkCupid did when they actually took their data from their website. Now, OkCupid has had like 23 million members. I don't know what they have now. But from polling their data and from them taking their survey, they got essentially the same kind of curves on the sexual marketplace value chart. So I started reading Rollo Tomassi, and then I started reading other blogs that was associated with Rollo Tomassi, like Dow Rock and a few others. So naturally, reading that and putting that online in the search engine, when you go on YouTube, guess what YouTube does? YouTube sends you videos that are associated with your searches, with your search algorithm. So they sent me to Tom Leykis. And I watched Tom Leykis videos for like a week or so, because I was familiar with Tom Leykis. Tom Leykis started in Los Angeles back in the late 80s. So I've been following Tom Leykis for a long time. So, Tom Leykis is funny. I listened to his videos, and the algorithm led me to A Voice for Men, the men's rights advocates. So I listened to A Voice for Men for a while, for like 2 or 3 weeks, because I had just gone through, this 2013, I had just gone through some BS with a girlfriend of mine, or with a long-term girlfriend of mine. We had broken up. I was going through some BS. So I was listening to A Voice for Men, and I'd always been interested in men's rights advocacy, because I had issues with females over the years, over the period of like 30 years. So It was fascinating to me that there was people out here actually talking about these topics. That led me to eventually MGTOW with Barbarossa and Stardust. Listening to MGTOW, I rock with their way of doing things because they were using empirical and scientific data to explain dating and mating. I had never really heard most people do that. That had never really done that. Even the PUAs, they use neuroscience to actually get chicks, but never to explain relationships. So I thought MGTOW was on point. I didn't agree with everything they said, but the thing is that they had a direction. They had at least trying to use science and history and biology to actually explain dating and mating, which nobody really ever did. So I actually became a MGTOW and started a MGTOW channel in 2014 called Black Manosphere Speaks, because I wanted to contribute to the MGTOW movement. Fell out with the MGTOWs, and then with Black Ram and a couple of others, we became ITMORs. ITMORs are like the ex-MGTOW people, okay? So 4 of us came over. We decided to switch over to the black side, start doing essentially MGTOW content for black men. So once you get on the black side, after coming from basically a mixed group or basically pretty much white group of MGTOWs, you have to get to know the landscape. Now, fortunately, I had already known Obsidian, because Obsidian had done a blog called Just for Men that I used to follow. That a lot of the people like Rollo Tomasi and Dow Rock and a few other people of that ilk that followed the blogs, Obsidian had ran or helped run a blog called Just for Men, and he had started a YouTube channel. So while I was starting to make content for my ITMOR channel, Introspective Black Men of Reform, I started following Obsidian. And Obsidian, it's like a rabbit hole. You follow Obsidian, the Angry Man, Sergeant Willie Pete. You saw the other people pop up that from what they call Black Manosphere 1.0. And that's how you go down a rabbit hole to actually find the manosphere. Why am I saying that? Okay, people that don't know about this, because we don't advertise. And if we did, Google and YouTube and mainstream would shut us down from advertising. We don't have banners around advertising for the manosphere, much less the black manosphere, which is even smaller. Yet people have to find it. And how do people find the black manosphere? Because that's what we're talking about. This little tiny space in cyberspace on YouTube. Collection of people that don't even have Black Manosphere on their website, or Black Manosphere in their hashtag, or Black Manosphere on their channel. How do they find people? How do they find SWP? How do they find Obsidian? How do I find people like me, like Angry Man, like a host of other brothers actually have content in this arena? They find them the same way that I found MGTOW, through a series of people. Now, Rollo Tomasi didn't have a YouTube channel until way later. He has one now, but he didn't have one then. Almost 10 years ago, when I first found Rollo Tomasi in 2012, he didn't have a YouTube channel. He had a website, he had a blog, but that was the gateway, that was the entry point for me finding everybody else. So when you say what's next, when it comes to Kevin is an entry point, but Kevin is an entry point that's going mainstream. Rollo Tomasi was never mainstream. He still isn't. The only way I found Rollo Tomasi is because of mainstream publication, OkCupid, which is a huge dating site that everybody knew about. And Christian Rudder wrote a book and did research based upon his sexual marketplace value. So I found him. So I found him. That's how I found everybody else. Kevin is that entry point. Kevin is that portal that other people, especially black men, can find the rest of us. Now, when I found Rollo Tomasi, did it matter whether I liked him or not, or whether he's white or not, whether he's black or not? No, it didn't. It didn't matter whether I agreed with him or not, because some of what Rollo Tomasi wrote, I didn't agree with. I didn't. And especially some of the other bloggers that were associated with Rollo and Dow Rock. There's a couple I didn't really like at all, because one of them was actually a racist. When I got to MGTOW, I didn't agree with everybody, but it didn't matter. It led me somewhere. And it eventually led me where I am now, which is the Black Manosphere, where I've been for the last, I say 7 years, at least. And some of my subs have been with me since my Black Gnostic Speaks days, when I was a MGTOW. I'm still a MGTOW, but when I did MGTOW content. So the importance of Kevin Samuels is not, whether you like him or not. It's not where you think his image of masculinity is what you like. It's not whether he's actually going in and putting foot to ass to whatever high profile strag that you don't like. He's there to become a portal, his name to become a portal for everybody else, because if they don't know who he is and whether they like what he says or not, they go look him up. The algorithm is going to lead you to everybody else eventually. It's going to lead you down that path, just like the path that I took. Now, it took me 2 years to get to the Black Manosphere. Actually 3, when I started with SMV and Dataclysm. It took me 3 years to get to the Black Manosphere. But I got here through a series of events, through a series of connections. But it would never have happened if I hadn't found the first one. Would have never known that it existed. I didn't know that. Well, hell, nobody knew that the Black Manosphere existed. I had heard of Tommy Sotomayor. At the time, I could care less who he was. I found out later who he was after I got involved, but I could care less who he was. But the thing is that my portal of entry was something else. People's portal of entry is going to be Kevin, even for the females, for the women. Because let's be honest, who are you talking to, really? You're talking to women. You are. You're trying to counter the narrative that women put up. You are. A lot of guys are honest with themselves. Oh, we're about the brotherhood. I mean, we are, but let's be honest. This whole space is about countering anti-black male narratives. That's what it's about, even within our own heads. Because if it wasn't about talking to women or answering women, we wouldn't get upset when somebody talks to one. We would be unbothered. We would be indifferent to it. It's like with divestors. Most guys in this space now are indifferent to divestors. Why? Because for the most part, divestors don't matter. In our heads, it doesn't matter anymore. So whether Kevin talks to females every night, which I haven't seen people not tune in and not donate and not answer and not use the clips, they do care. And the fact that he does do it has other YouTubers that are not associated with the Black Manosphere, that are female, that are male, that have large channels, that sometimes not even black, repeating the content, repeating the talking points, repeating the message that we have crafted over the period of 15 years. It's called spread. And if they hear it, they become interested in it, they look it up, where's it going to lead? It's going to lead back to everybody else. That's the point. What is the mission? What is the original mission of the Black Manosphere? Was the original mission to be a brotherhood and connect with men partially? But if that's the case, we've never done that. Do we connect, because we're always in the same space over and over again and we get to know each other? Yeah, we do connect in that way. But is that the main reason that we're here? No, it's not. Our main reason we're here, just like for the MGTOWs, is our relationship with women, with the opposite sex, and what that does to us, not only in our personal life, but our legal life and our public life, and what that interaction does to the black male image, and us producing our own narrative of that image. That's what the mission of the Black Manosphere is. And producing a narrative that stays closed and stays behind this YouTube wall does it no good, because it's a narrative, it's a message, it's an ideology that needs to get out. It needs to counter what's out there. And it can't counter what's out there in here. It's got to spread. It's got to break out to the wider population. Who has access to the wider population? It's not us. It's the mainstream. There would be no Fresh and Fit without Kevin blowing up. There wouldn't be. There wouldn't be a Fresh and Fit without Kevin blowing up. There would not be all this talk about the red pill being mainstream. Wouldn't be. There would be no red pill talk on World Star Hip Hop, or all these TikTok videos going back and forth with it. That was on Blog Talk in a tiny, tiny sense on Blog Talk. And Sergeant Willie Pete, I've heard his voice on Blog Talk back, in 2009, 2010, 10 years ago on Blog Talk, maybe 40 people watched. And I'm still waiting for 1.0 to produce the evidence that they say they have. I'm still waiting on that. I've been asking for like 5 years, and people always claim that they have it or it's there, and I'm waiting to produce the evidence. And I don't want to hear that a server crashed. Either it exists or it doesn't. And if it doesn't exist, then you have no proof. Anyhow, that's an aside. The counter narrative has to be out into the mainstream. Kevin is just that vehicle that we need, that was picked by random, out of happenstance, to be that vehicle out into the mainstream. Now, what does that do for us? That means once our voices get heard, that means all the agendas that we pick to be attached to that voice, to be attached to this agenda, can go forth. It has nothing to do, what it does have to do with relationships. It's already having an effect. I got subs that have white colleagues, upper middle class white colleagues, that are listening to Kevin Samuels, actually taking Kevin Samuels' advice, which is standards, and it's having an effect on them. Kevin is not just an accident. Partially is, but the thing is not really just an accident. It could have been somebody else, but the thing is, there's very logical reasons why Kevin actually happened. And me and Kevin have talked about it in emails going back and forth. Okay? Very logical reason. And Kevin has never disputed anything I've said about why these things happen. Ever. First thing is that everybody, is including Sergeant Willie P., talks about patriarchy and black women coming back to the table and black women submitting to some kind of order. And the first thing is how is the Black Manosphere, even Kevin Samuels, is going to actually do that, right? Because we think that we have to rise up, start making all this money, have this kick-ass patriarchy, and put our foot on the black women's neck to actually make them do right. And that's never going to happen. Why? Because the environment controls women. It always has. If you go back in history, the only reason feminism even rose up is because the environment changed. Politically, physically, economically, socially, it all changed. And I'll go into it one day. I'm not going to go into now. It's actually the Industrial Revolution, but I will go into it. I'm actually, going to read a chapter from the Empire of Cotton. We're actually going to go through how this changed. I'm not going to do it here because it would make it too long. But the environment is what causes women to change. And what we call the Fourth Industrial Revolution is causing the environment to change. Economically, culturally, physically, politically, socially. It's causing the environment to change, which causes what? Women to change. Now, women are changing slowly. People think it's supposed to happen overnight. I don't know. We're intelligent thinking men think that people change overnight. It's not real unless it happens within a few weeks or a few months or within a year. Women didn't become independent, including black women, within a year or within a decade or within several decades. It's a slow process. Black women have been changing for the last 70 years, but it's slow. You don't notice it until it reaches a critical point. Same way it's going to take to reverse this or reverse these attitudes. It's not going to be within a few months or 6 months or a year. It's going to be a slow process. Now, will it take 70 years? No, because the environment says it can't take 70 years. It's going to take more like 4 or 5. Will it be a complete reversal? The thing is, how do they start? Black women were never this dependent, shrinking, violet, mousy kind of people. They never were. They were never that way. You can go back and look at old movies. Black women are always sassy and independent and independent thought and like to fight with you and argue with you. That's always been that way. But for them to change to a point where we can make some kind of compromise with them, because men and women always make compromises, it's going to take some time. Okay, I saw this 5 years ago. It was obvious that it was going to have to happen because the erosion of jobs and the changing of the economy and the changing the way we form families or get together was going to change. So they had to change with it. And then we're going to have to change how they chose mates. And there was going to have to be a negotiation between men and women. I had already seen the slow changes in my environment amongst women. Online, offline, talking to guys, talking to women. I had already started to see the change. A lot, but it's slow, so most people don't look for it and don't believe that it can happen. And then along came COVID, which is a radical change in the environment, a radical stress in not only our environment, but our culture, but also the cultures around the world. So it's a shock to the system. So guess what happened? It was a shock to the females. Females like stability. They like predictability. They don't like stress. They don't like shock. Females get anxious. They get uncertain. And Big Daddy government, which has been their man for the past 60 years, is uncertain. They're going to look for a new man. They're going to look for men because of the anxiety level. Kids getting put out of school, empty shelves in the store, long bread lines. That causes women to panic and say, I need support just in case I lose my job, in case I get hurt, in case I get sick. I need a man. So if I need a man, where do I start? Do I want to start at the bottom or the top? Kevin already had a mix. He already turned ELs into high value men, and they wanted men with resources. That's where you start. So I told Kevin, they're going to start with you. They're not starting at the bottom. They're going to start at the top. They're going to start as far up as they can actually get. And so Kevin had a sales pitch for him. Shout out to him. He shopped his product, which is what he called high value men, and gave him a label. But he also gave qualifications for actually being with these guys, because these are the qualifications that these guys wanted from women, from their wives, from the women that they would actually acquire. If you want us to actually take you in, you're going to have these qualifications. That's where all this stuff comes from. And since you had a shock to the system, these women actually started to come up and trying to apply. What is the secret to getting one of these guys? Give me the secret. Give me the magic key, the magic bullet to have access to guys like this. Same thing the PUAs did. They sold the magic bullet for a long time. If you take this course, follow these precepts, you buy my books, I'm going to give you the magic bullet to dating and being successful with 8, 9s, and 10s, wherever you are, forever. The magic bullet. And guess what, guys back then with the PUA books bought these courses to try to get or try to acquire this magic bullet. Did you think women were going to be any different? That's where human beings work. That's what they did. So that's how come they all came. They all had a conversation. And then on the other side, I care what people say, because I've experienced this myself. Men want to know what women are talking about. Men want to hear what women say out of their own mouths, interviewed by a man. Well, all the guys lined up on the other side and gave donations and super chats and other kind of stuff because they wanted to hear it. That's why it blew up. Everybody's locked down under COVID. They're working from home on their computer anyway. They need to be entertained. They need to hear conversations they couldn't otherwise hear. They tune into him. Same thing with the women. They want to find what is the secret to unlocking this code for the guy that I want. He just happened to be the right person with the right message or the right style at the right time. Divine intervention, dumb luck, preparation, all three. So now he blows up to the point to where all these precepts that he's learned, because trust and believe, Kevin was back in my Coliseum back in 2016, making comments, participating with brothers that were in the Black Manosphere since 2016. So all the stuff that we know, he knows. And you can hear it being disseminated on his show, which is why brothers are getting mad, because I said this, you can hear him say it. All this stuff that Kevin is talking about, it's coming from us. So all the messages that we have perfected over many years are actually getting out into the mainstream, and women have no argument, which is something I said about a year ago. Women don't have an argument against this. I was just on a show with the controversial counselor that we had like 4 or 5 women going at me. They have no answers for the rhetoric that we have. They don't. They're not prepared. It's what you saw with Nicki Minaj. She was not prepared. Kevin had an answer for everything that she said. Why is this important? And we're going to wind this up. I probably have to do a part 2. I don't want this to be too long. Why is this important? It's because the message gets heard. The portal gets seen by millions of people. The portal gets seen. ET Entertainment tonight is seen by multi-millions of people. The opportunity for our message, our portal, to be discovered, somebody picking up the magic key and opening the door, is being seen by millions of people, and also millions of black men that had never heard of us before, don't know that we exist. But that gives us an opportunity to actually enlighten these men on our philosophy. Why do you think Christianity is such a dominant force over the last 2,000 years? Is it because they kept Jesus in a cave? Or they made Christianity a secret society? Even though there are secret societies within Christianity, but that's another point. The thing is, why did it spread? Had missionaries to spread the gospel. Kevin happens to be our John the Baptist in mainstream. Whether you like him or not, a lot of people didn't like John the Baptist. That's how he got beheaded. But he spread the gospel. He spread the gospel before Jesus even got here. So Kevin Samuels is not Black Jesus. He's John the Baptist. Will we have one Jesus or multiple Jesus? Will the 12 disciples multiply and become the 1,000 disciples that will follow in behind or follow on the coattails of John the Baptist? Now that's up to you. I'm going to end it with this, as I begun the video with this. I'm not here to tell you how this ends. I'm here to tell you how this begins. And where we go from here, I'll leave that to you. With that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.